to remind you all that you have to stay seated the whole time on our way back. Feel free to take pictures and videos. Remain in your seats as you do so. All right, on behalf of the National Park Service and the United States Navy, I want to thank you for coming to Pearl Harbor National Memorial, and specifically coming and joining us for this visit out to the Arizona Memorial. Specifically as part of the National Park Service, we're one of over 400 units here at Pearl Harbor National Memorial that honor the memory, legacy, and the unique features and beautiful aspects, as well as some of the tragic and hard stories that make up what is the history and legacy of the United States. Our mission is to preserve and protect these resources, not just for this generation, but for future generations. At Pearl Harbor National Memorial, part of our mission is to tell all the stories that led up to the attacks on Pearl Harbor, as well as the stories of that attack and the stories that would follow, including the continued efforts to seek for peace and reconciliation with the ending of that war today. Specifically focusing on that mission of peace and reconciliation, I'm going to tell you two stories that came together here at Pearl Harbor. The first is a man named Richard Fisk. Richard Fisk was a bugler on the West Virginia. He stepped out onto the deck of his ship here at Battleship Row on the morning of December 7, 1941 to play morning colors. As he stepped out, a bomb would hit the deck and throw him from his ship out into the waters of Pearl Harbor. He would have to swim through the oil and the burning surface to seek shelter on Ford Island over here that morning. He would then eventually get into a boat and spend the rest of the day pulling bodies from the water. Some of those were perfectly healthy individuals that had been thrown or jumped into the water that he was helping to find safety. Some of those were injured men. Some of those were the dead. Because of that event, and continuing forward his service in the Pacific theater of World War II, he would grow to have a pretty severe hatred and bias towards individuals of Japanese heritage. He would carry that hatred with him for decades. Eventually, we would have the wall of hatred and bias receive its first crack when he came out to one of the commemoration events here. He was out here standing in the shrine room wall like many of you just might have done. And as he was standing there, he saw a Japanese woman that was laying a floral tribute at the base of the shrine room wall in tears. That touched his heart. So he stepped up and he had to hear her story. He eventually found out that she had a family member that had served in the war and lost his life, a Japanese man. And that she felt the loss of life was terrible. She wanted to come out and pay tribute to the loss of life that happened here. That softened his heart. So eventually he was asked during the 50th anniversary commemoration to come out here and meet a gentleman, a Japanese bombardier that had attacked Pearl Harbor that morning. And he said he would do that. So he came to meet a man by the name of Zenji Abe. They stepped into a facility right here on site. Stood there looking at each other for just a brief moment, and then almost simultaneously they saluted one another. They eventually came up and they told each other their stories and decided that day that they were the flip side of the same coin. They were soldiers doing the soldier's job. And eventually they ripped a dollar bill in half that day when they first met and kept those two halves in their billfolds for the rest of their lives, saying they were the two parts of one whole. They eventually would come out here and meet each other again and again at other commemorations. They formed a friendship, even a brotherhood, a love for one another and respect for each other. Even when they weren't able to come out, they eventually decided they would make sure that 2 roses were sent out to the different commemorations, and that 1 rose would be placed in floral tribute to the fallen American lives and 1 to the fallen Japanese lives. Folks, if they could put aside their bias and hatred after living through the trauma and pain and horror of war, hopefully we can look and find it in our hearts to also find that peace and reconciliation within our own lives. Ultimately, time. Thank you for coming to see us. Once we get the bridges set, you folks can feel free to stand up. We hope you have a memorable day for the rest of your time here.